Welcome back to another discussion about maladaptive daydreaming. Today, our focus is on triggers such as music and films. And I have with me today Glen San Juan, who is a hypnotist, and he deals with maladaptive daydreaming, anxiety, and weight loss.
Hey everybody, good to see you. I am with Nicole Vetter, who is a former maladaptive daydreamer and now current content creator. Great having you on, Nicole.
Same. It was funny, we were talking about, this for our topic this week. And for me, music is not much of a trigger, really, and I know for a lot of
Sure.
people it is. I've gotten a lot of feedback on it.
hmm
I think the thing for me is, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure we all go through this where you're listening to certain music at certain times. And there's definitely, certain songs that will come on that will make me think of past, characters in my paracosm, essentially
Sure.
like I will think of certain characters as I'm listening to certain songs because I'm one of those people that listens heavily to music. So I will like listen to the album like nonstop until it's
Sure.
like, in my brain,
Yep.
which makes it easier to kind of, create that association. But tell me, what have you heard from other clients that you've worked with about, music as their trigger?
Sure. So there's a lot of individuals that I've heard from where if they're listening to music, or sometimes all they have to do is just, start their playlist on their phone, and it already takes them into the other world that they want to escape to. Or it
Mhm.
helps bring those feelings that they want to, where they can just separate themselves from reality and be fully immersed
Yep.
in. And by having that music there, it does make it more real. It does set the tone, whether you do want to stay in something more sad, or I mean, it's whatever you want it to be, right?
Mhm.
And there's that comfort of, as you can immerse yourself, I mean, once you have the headphones in, then you can shut off the rest of the world. Any distractions, people are less likely to talk to you if you have your headphones on, right?
Yeah.
I think it's definitely one that pops up quite often. A lot of people will say something about how music is a big trigger for them, as well
Have
as as
you
well as movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was gonna say if you experienced that, anyone who does have films as their trigger, because for me, definitely films are a huge trigger. They're probably the number one trigger for me.
Yeah.
And it's funny how as I've stopped engaging maladaptive daydreaming, I've stopped watching as many films as I was in the past because I was essentially like I needed it to keep going. Not that I really needed it, but it was definitely a crutch of mine. Yeah, I think even, me changing things up in my paracosm and getting rid of a character, adding a character will
hmm
come from, I think a lot of the times when I did get into a certain like actor, it was definitely during, like, oh, they just had a movie come out, it looks really good, and like I'll watch the movie and just be like triggered to go off and create this whole new, path in my paracosm for
Sure.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I've spoken to individuals who, even when they're in the movie theater, you know,
Mhm.
usually you got to pay money to go watch a movie.
Yeah.
They'll go there, and then as they're watching the movie, a scene will pop up, and then I'll just take them right back into their head.
Yep.
And where they're not even really focusing on the movie as they are, it's more interesting how I would have liked to see that plot line go, or I would have liked to see them say that and then go on from there. And sometimes before you know it, the movie's already over.
Right.
And they're like, shoot, that's a whole like couple hours that have gone by where you don't even know what the actual story was supposed to be about.
And it's funny for me, I mean, I'm not really like I don't watch the news anymore and I don't have a television, but and when I was engaging maladaptive daydreaming, it would be even when the trailers would come out, I would kind of like be like, oh, okay. And then like kind of start making that switch. And then by the time the movie does come out and I do go to the movie theater, like
hmm
I'm fully daydreaming and like it's already all like built in.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because it's like thinking back now, and doing all this content. But yeah, it's so interesting to think back to, oh, when that movie came out, that's when, I started obsessing about this actor. And, and it's just, I don't know, like that's like this chronicles in my life. It's so
Sure.
fascinating to me.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, it's not even just movies and music. It's also even just like TV shows too. If you're sitting
Yes.
down, you're watching Netflix, watching Hulu or whatever, same thing can just happen on the couch. And, better yet, as opposed to being in a movie theater, you're in the comfort in your home. You can even just turn off the TV if you really want to, and then just kind of sit back and just play play it out however you want in your head. And so that's just another way that they want to take themselves out of reality, or even without knowing it, it just starts happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that we really know that we're doing it, you
Yeah.
know?
It
Uh,
just kind of happens organically, you know?
yeah. But I think the interesting thing for me is that I would kind of almost continue to trigger myself. Like
Hmm.
if I got onto one actor, I would watch everything they've ever made. And then I would watch
Sure.
interviews and I would like, it's so amazing how I'm very into like body language. And of course I can move my hands around a lot, which makes sense. But I'm super into body language and like voices. And it's so interesting how like that helped me build like my like I mean, I have also a great imagination, which is shocking, I know. But like I can see everything in my head, how all these people move and talk, and like it's like data that I'm constantly pulling in from everything that I'm like essentially collecting.
Yeah. And I'm wondering what your mind is actually doing with all that data. Like wondering why it's harvesting all this information and
Right.
into what end, you know?
And I think the other thing too is, I mean, I've been learning a lot lately, and like, neurodivergence and all that. And it's like our brains all work so very differently.
Hmm.
And I may not be like the best at math, but I have these other skills, and it's like what could I do with this, like what. And it's so fascinating to me, like what my brain does and what it collects and how I see things. Like I was reading Prince Harry's book, and he said that in his memory he remembers places, so he remember like walking into a palace, and he remembers the color of the shades and everything about it, but he won't remember what's been said. Versus
Sure,
me, when I have memories, a lot of the times it's like the emotions I felt, I remember that. But there's a lot of stuff that I don't remember, that doesn't stick in my brain, which
sure,
is so interesting to me.
sure. And I'm glad you actually brought up emotions because I mean, as you're watching a movie or listening to music, you do have your emotions come up. And that's where, if you can, for people who do have maladaptive daydreaming, that could be something that they want their emotions to go a certain way or
Mhm.
take themselves a certain way that sometimes feels a lot better as opposed to what they're actually seeing right in front of them, you know?
Yeah. It's so funny thinking back to, you know, like I mean, I essentially triggered myself all the time because I
Hmm.
would watch all these films, rewatch them, right? Like I would have favorites. And it's even so I watched a movie last night. I rewatched an old classic because I was just looking to just chill. And there's something about things that like we're nostalgic about that like really like make us calm.
Sure,
Uh, and it's always so funny like opening up, my like DVD collection and looking at everything and just like I've collected so much. There's movies that I love that I don't have.
sure.
But it's like, why do I have this film? I watched it once because I was like in that moment where I was like so obsessed and so in
Hmm.
it that like I needed it. I needed to have it in my collection so that if I needed more, I don't know, what was I seeking? Like it was always there, and I
Sure,
could get myself ready for my daydreaming.
sure.
Yeah.
So in a way, what you're kind of saying is like just having that DVD is almost like having a primer to
Yeah.
take you back into
Oh,
your head.
right. There's definitely there have been times where I would not watch the full movie, but open up the DVD, put it in the DVD player, and watch certain scenes. And like
Sure,
that was what I needed in that moment to kind of whatever it is. I don't know.
sure.
So
Just to
interesting.
kind of satisfy that part of your brain that you want, you know?
Right.
Like, or until you can finally immerse yourself, like, or I guess I think of myself like, if I want to see a scene in a movie, I'll go to YouTube. Chances are somebody uploaded it on there. And
Mhm,
just to get that feeling of what they had in that time or what I felt at that time, I
mhm.
mean, I can see it being pretty significant for individuals that, want to relive that. And in your
Right.
case, and in your case, you had a whole album or like a whole like collection of movies where you would do that. And
Yes.
I guess music as well too.
Right. It's funny, even on my phone, I have a few like videos of like just something that I've recorded, like a very short thing that I've recorded from a movie,
Hmm.
just because I want to keep that one moment. It's so interesting. Like there are definitely certain scenes in movies that I don't know. I'm just like very into movement, which is probably why I'm very interested in directors, because they're the ones who are being like, oh, let's create this, move like
Hmm.
this, let's choreograph it like this. And those are the things that really stick in my head, like
Sure,
those movements. It's so
sure.
fascinating.
So I mean, I guess kind of taking us back to like to MD, I wonder how detrimental that got over time, at least in your case, Nicole. Like when you start to notice that it was like becoming, you notice that it's becoming a problem with the more movies
Yeah.
that you watched.
So I struggle with that because I don't know that it ever felt detrimental. I think there was definitely points where I felt shame about it because I didn't know it was a thing that other people experienced this.
Hmm.
But I don't think that there was really any point where I was like, I mean, there was a couple of times where I was like, oh, I should stop. But I think it goes back to the way that our brains work, right? And we all do this, right? Is we're so used to doing something. Like how many people do stuff that they did even in childhood because they're just so used to it and we don't even think about it,
Sure.
right? We don't think about, I want to create a different life for myself. And I think somebody like me, who's a routine coach, who's like super into figuring out routines that fit my life better and let me create the life I want, I think about it a lot more. But I think it was one of those things that was just part of my life. And I needed it so much as like really survival that for a long time, it wasn't truly a thought of like, I can't do this. Like, I need this to survive and I'm going to
Sure.
continue doing it,
Okay.
detriment or not. And I'm sure everyone's got, different thoughts about it and different experiences, but that was my specific experience. The only reason I even considered giving up maladaptive daydreaming was because I had really worked through a lot of my other mental health issues. And
Yeah.
I just got to that point where I was like, wow, I'm thriving and not surviving for the first time in my life. What else am I capable of? And I
Hmm.
was asking myself, do I need maladaptive daydreaming? Like, is this something I'm going to continue to engage in? What needs
Sure.
does it fill? Like, what is it? What am I coping with?
Hmm.
And then it seemed obvious. And I had the opportunity because I was moving to North Carolina and it seemed like it would be a lot easier if I just cut it clean. So, yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, you mentioned about how you don't watch movies as much as you used to. Like you used to watch it. I mean, how much would you watch like at a time?
I mean,
Or rather, like how
if
much time would
I'm
you spend like watching movies?
so when I was probably at my most depressed and needed maladaptive daydreaming like the most,
Hmm.
I would binge watch. And I mean, we all binge watch, right? Like we've all binge watched a season or two of Game of Thrones. Maybe how many seasons were there? 6 more? I don't know.
Something like that.
Right? There was a lot, but I've always highly used the library. So I would go to the library and I would get everything that that person was into, and then I would request everything else. So like, I didn't really like, yes, there was, I mean, I have a DVD collection, so there was money spent, but a lot of it was not really money spent. I would binge watch everything. So, when I was really depressed, spending a whole day in the basement in the dark, just watching movies was not unheard of for me. And then
Okay.
spending whatever rest of that day daydreaming, yeah, that seems like a great use of time at that time when I was like, I need to survive, I need to stay safe, and I need to stay away from like the people that aren't safe.
Sure.
That was a very reasonable day for me to have, totally. I
Okay.
remember coming home from school and watching movies all the time. I didn't spend time outside, which is weird to me because I spend so much time outside now.
Sure.
And in regards to getting rid of my TV, it wasn't necessarily because I was getting ready to get rid of maladaptive or to stop engaging in maladaptive daydreaming. It was really more along the lines of being more intentional with my life, which is probably what helped me get rid of maladaptive daydreaming.
Sure.
I'm already working, 40 hours a week for my company. Like, I don't want to spend another 3 hours every single night. And I don't know that I would do it every single night, maybe every other night, just watching movies. Like, that's so much screen time. And it's not really the life that I was looking to live. And I got rid of my TV, and it seemed really scary when I did it, but it was really fine, and now I
Sure.
do watch a lot less films. I think usually on the weekends, I'll find myself kind of, okay, like it's Sunday night. I don't have any plans. What am I going to do? And I will watch a movie. And I still look to see what's coming out, what's new, and what have I not watched.
Sure.
Before, it would be mostly I am watching this one person's films, and then I'll drop in a couple others because something came out or I saw something at the library that I wanted to see from a long time ago. but it would be mostly like that one person's films, even if they were in it for like 5 minutes. I've watched some ridiculous films that were just horrible because this one actor is in it for 5 minutes.
Sure.
I think that is the biggest waste of time that I, have engaged in with maladaptive daydreaming. Like the
Sure.
time that I've given it, like I needed it to survive. This was a coping mechanism, fine, acceptable. But the amount of movies I watched that were like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen, and this actor was in it for 5 minutes, that's happened a
Sure.
lot.
And I mean, like, when you think about it, the average movie is about 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And that's 2 hours that you could have like spent outside, you know, talking with other people about whatever issues you might have going on during the day. But there is that comfort of actually just being in your own space and being able
Right.
to watch a movie, even if it's a terrible movie, as you said, it's a lot safer than, going out.
I was just thinking, I'm sure there's a maladaptive daydreamer out there who's obsessed with Harry Potter, but imagine that's your paracosm. That's the world that you've built in your mind is Harry Potter,
Sure.
because I think we can all relate to that.
Sure.
And so that person is probably watching the movies all the time, reading the books all the time, and they're just consuming the same media over and over again. They might enjoy other things, like there's other Harry Potter movies that have come out, and there's a lot of other YA fiction that's amazing.
Hmm.
But that's what it's like, is just constantly consuming the same media, because it essentially does trigger you to be able to do the thing that you really want to do.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Especially like which could lead to someone being just in their room, they'd rather just lay in bed, just
Right.
pacing around, rather living that world instead.
And
Instead of
imagine
living.
that parent too. They would have no clue, like they've probably never heard of maladaptive daydreaming. They don't know what to look for. They don't know what's going on with their child. And they're just asking themselves, why is my child inside in their room all the time? And like they're obsessed with something, and it's wholesome. Harry Potter itself is very wholesome. And I think a lot of people get a lot out of it, even I have myself.
Hmm.
But still, I think they would be very confused, and that parent wouldn't have the resources to fully understand like what's going on there and how do I get this child help? Because even if they do take him to a therapist,
What are they going to do?
therapist isn't going to know, right? There's
Exactly.
not any information. I mean, would a therapist be even able to, without in the DSM, ask the right questions, be able
Hmm.
to, like, would they know what they're looking for? I don't know. It's just, it's really interesting, and I mean, how many other disorders are like that out there that we don't
Right.
even fully comprehend yet?
This is a great time to learn about this now, since there are resources. There's starting to be more resources
Yep.
out online, such as ourselves. Not to put us too high up on a pedestal, but
We are talking
the
about it, and
yeah, we are
it's
talking about it, and it's good that other people are talking about it too.
yeah.
So, I guess one thing that I'm really curious about, what was for you in particular, who is the most memorable person that stood out to you that you caught in 5 minutes, that you decided that you had to find all the films on a particular actor,
Who's the most memorable?
or the first one that comes to mind?
So the last one was Brad Pitt, and that was an incredibly important part of my paracosm, because I learned a lot through adding this person into my paracosm. And I did this right as we're hitting COVID, because there was just a lot of changes in my paracosm. I didn't really know what was going to happen with COVID. And I don't even know how it happened. Did he have a movie that came out at that time? Probably. I don't know, and it's
Probably.
funny because I've never in my life have I been like, I love Brad Pitt. No, I've like, it was funny because I realized I think he's hilarious, and I actually really enjoy his films, and I actually enjoy him. But like, I'm one of those people that if everybody loves it, I hate it. I just like, I can't. Like, everybody
Yeah.
loves Jennifer Aniston. I do not understand why they love Jennifer Aniston. I do not like Jennifer Aniston. That's really harsh. I'm sorry. I just don't get it. But it's probably because everybody likes it and I just go against the crowd.
Sure.
So for me to all of a sudden be obsessed with Brad Pitt was like really weird. But I've also already seen probably a good portion of his films. So a lot of it was like rewatching stuff that I love. Like, I love Fight Club. I love Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I love Troy. That's like one of my all-time favorite films. So it was a lot of like rewatching and then realizing that I've always loved him. I just never put him in my paracosm.
Hmm.
But I also learned a lot from that, because for me, COVID was a time where I was growing so much, and I was like isolated, and it really, like, I flourished. I was one of those people that flourished thoroughly during COVID. And I just learned so much about myself. And it was probably one of the best, like, characters that I've had in my paracosm, because there was the least toxicity.
Sure.
Because before that was all I knew. And here I was trying to create something different. And there was a lot less drama because I wasn't trying to seek that drama. So I would say that, but there's also other characters that have come in and out, and I've just kept them. And like, this person's now officially my best friend in my mind. And if I met them, I would call them by their first name, which is a nickname, and I would try to hug them. And it would just seem so normal. You know,
Sure.
like, this is one of the things that I was really hoping for when I went to LA. I was like, I really hope I see a celebrity and I want to see my reaction. Like, if I meet this person and in my head, I've interacted with them so many times, am I going to get starstruck, freak out, or just be like, hey, what's up? How are you?
Sure.
I don't know.
Just to kind of test it out, right? Just
Yeah,
because I mean
right,
it's been in your head and your idea of them is in your head. To
right,
meet them that would be very interesting if you were
right.
to
Because
finally meet that person.
I've met a lot of actors, but I've never met an actor that I've placed in my paracosm. So I've never had I've never even seen what would happen in my brain if it would just blow up, you know? Yeah, that was super interesting to think about it, because
Oh,
I have, like, some of these people, I have followed their career from before anybody knew their name. And I've just seen that progression of who they are. And now everybody knows their name. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then, like, they're like good, I'm good buddies with them in my head. That's how it works, you know? So
sure.
yeah, it's kind of funny.
That would be a very interesting reality check. Like what
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't and reality checks aren't necessarily negative for all you know. Maybe they
Right.
appreciate something like that too.
Right.
Something you can bring into your own reality.
Right. And I don't know what I would say to them. Like, what do
That's
you
a
say?
that's the best part, right? Just that uncertainty of it.
Right. You know, I don't know. So
So
yeah.
who's to say?
Well, either way, thank you for joining us for another lovely discussion about maladaptive daydreaming. I am Nicole Vetter. I'm a content creator and former maladaptive daydreamer.
Yep. And I'm Glen San Juan, hypnotherapist. And you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram.